our new guest who wanted to hop on, a Babylonian Hebrew. What's going on, man?
All right.
Shalom.
Shalom, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you very much for having me on, Papa JF and Uncle Warski. Just been very much
Andy,
enjoying the
my
conversation so
Judar
far.
is beeping right now. Beep, beep.
Can you put the echo on me, or does that just work for you?
No, no. It's
Everyone,
but turn
welcome
off
to
your the stream.
Babylonian Hebrew.
The stream is always a few seconds lagging, so just turn off the stream or pause it and then because you know what I mean.
Hmm.
So yeah.
So,
Yeah, you.
sorry.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah. It's lagging a few seconds behind. So anyway, I just wanted to say thanks for having me on. And first of all, I just want to address something that David was saying earlier in the conversation. He was talking about he said something to the effect of Jews are white. I just wanted to say, well, white is like you can infinitely deconstruct white and say white is this and white is that and the other. But if you're saying that white equals European, then effectively that Jews are not a European population. In fact, Jews, as they exist presently in Europe, wouldn't exist if it were not for a migration of peoples from the Levant. As a matter of fact, you can look here in a article by Doron Behar et al. He writes,
Yes.
Ashkenazi Jews have been placed intermediarily between non-Jewish European. Ashkenazi Jews have been placed intermediately between non-Jewish Europeans and non-Jewish Middle Easterners in a variety of analyses, including multidimensional scaling and principal component analyses, Bayesian clustering, and population trees. In one of the largest of these studies, encompassing over 1,000 subjects from 14 Jewish and 69 non-Jewish populations, we found clear signatures of a Levantine ancestry component for Ashkenazi Jews, a component that was partially shared with other Jewish populations. So Jewish populations have a shared Levantine ancestry.
Absolutely.
The Levantine population, or at most,
Absolutely. Do you know who else is?
hybrid
You know what else
population.
is a Levantine population? Cyprus. Greek Cypriots are Levantine. They cluster with the Lebanese and the Jews. Um, you also know that the European population actually was also involved in migration.
I just wanted to briefly say there's a difference between those two Levantine components because one is from an earlier wave of European of Levantine farmers and whatnot that dispersed into Europe earlier than Jews are a different component. They diverged. Yeah,
I agree.
All right.
I'm saying
Jews are not a European population.
I'm saying in Cyprus. Cyprus is a special case.
Okay, cool. Cyprus is a special case.
Okay, so I wanted to make
they're Levantine basal. They're basically a Levantine or a Levantine mixed population.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. I actually fully agree with that. So here's the interesting thing. The majority component of the European population. Do you know on what continent that arises from?
You what?
Are you aware of the provenance of the majority European genome?
No, I know that Europeans come from people who originated in Central Asia. Yeah, I get it, and everyone can all eventually be traced back to.
No. This is recent. This is recent. They now so there have been a ton of new archaeogenetic findings that are very strong. 1,000 prehistoric skeletons dated from around that time show that the Yamnaya or Proto-Indo-European ingress into Europe dates back only to around 2700 BC to 2500 BC, so around 4700 to 4500 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
This is the majority. This is the majority population.
Okay,
so
and
so
there's a 2,000-year gap there between that and between Jews coming into Europe. Jews still behave and very much identify as an exogenous, non-Western population in Europe, and in terms of how they identify, even if they don't consciously identify as I am Levantine or I'm a practitioner of the Jewish religion or I love Jewish culture, the fact of the matter is, if you look at Pew data, and this is old Pew data, but what it shows is that how do Jews in America identify? They were asked the question, what does it mean to be Jewish? And the percentage that said the highest thing was 73% said remembering the Holocaust was an essential part of what it means for them to be Jewish. 73%. That was the highest. Below that was 69% leading a moral life. Below that was 56% working for justice/equality. Below that, being intellectually curious, 49, and so on and so forth, with caring about Israel being only 43, being a part of a Jewish community being only 28, observing Jewish law being 19%. But
Precisely.
I just want to point this out. How does this, quote, remembering the Holocaust manifest itself vis-a-vis the identity of Jews living in Europe? It manifests itself as in viewing any possible manifestation of European identity being some sort of thing that will lead to inevitable mass death for Jews in Europe or something along those lines. And therefore they fight it tooth and therefore Jewish communities tend to fight it tooth and nail, both on the left and the right. So
Jewish communities in Europe, aside from basically France and I guess the United Kingdom, are almost non-existent. Their intermarriage rates are around 70-something%.
All right,
and
great.
Okay, and so this poll that you're talking about is also a poll of American Jews.
Yes, I know.
Okay, yeah. Do you know what the intermarriage rate is for?
Yes.
American,
I know it's very
do you know
high.
Do you know what percentage of those intermarried couples raise their children Jewish?
It doesn't matter if they're quote,
you-
raised Jewish in terms of religion or not. It could be a minuscule percent. It could be
No,
0% if they're
mean,
raised Jewish. All that matters is that they know of that in their ancestry, and they choose to consciously identify with the sort of mythos.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they don't raise their kids as members of the Jewish community. This is a statistic from Richard Lind.
All right, and there could be someone who's 1/4 black and they're not raised as part of quote the black community, yet they still feel like outsiders compared to European civilization. Their interest is antithetical to the interests of, let's say, indigenous Westerners.
Is there any evidence?
David, just let him finish.
Sorry. Is there any evidence whatsoever that these 3/4 of children of Jewish Gentile mixed couples identify as non-white? I mean,
no, it doesn't matter.
They don't look non-white.
Well, look at No, they don't. It's fairly easy, actually. If you look at Jews, if you can see the Levantine features. I mean, come on, dude. Like Ashkenazi Jews are already, some of them, majority genetically European. Yet they still identify and act and behave and see their interests as being those of an outgroup, even if they don't view that outgroup as being specifically as
because
a Jewish outgroup.
Because they still have a Jewish
globalist ideologies.
Because they still have
universalist ideology.
Hey, David,
all right.
Hang on.
Sorry, you and Frank go on.
Hang on, David. Honestly, like, he can't get one point across without you jumping in. Wait till he's finished, and then respond. All right? Is that cool?
I'm just going to grab some coconut water. You and Frame can continue for a little bit.
Okay, so I want to tie this back to the discussion on identity and ethnocentrism, because I've been trying to steer the boat back to what the original topic has been, but it's been, kind of difficult to get very basic premises agreed to. I thought what we would be discussing primarily was the relative levels of ethnocentrism displayed by Jews in the West and by non-Jewish white people in the West, or really any group, because I wanted to highlight some of the collective action that's taken from a political power perspective and also from a business and cultural perspective. And I think David's position is that there is no difference, or that whites are every bit as ethnocentric. So, David, can I get your thoughts on what's your position on relative ethnocentrism levels?
I don't see any evidence, any statistical evidence for a difference. I feel like if there were evidence, it would show up in areas like college admission statistics, which they don't.
Wait, no, they wouldn't show up in admission statistics.
I've given you data.
Hold on a second. Okay, well, that's a bizarre claim. I think you may have just misunderstood.
I'll tell you why.
But no, hold on, David. It's my turn now. I'm going to give you some data so that you can process it. One is the number of groups and organizations specifically dedicated to identity. Okay, that's going to satisfy your requirement about empirical data, hard numbers. So if I tell you that as of 2016, there were 366 501c3 or 501c4 organizations directly and explicitly oriented towards either Jewish or Israeli advocacy, political activism, or education. And I would be curious to see, and I could also give you statistics on the funding of those relative organizations. How many are there for white identity?
Probably 3 or 4.
Yeah, they're like Identity Europa and like a few others with, like 20, 30 members.
Mhm.
So does that satisfy your need for empirical data there? How do you respond to that?
Okay,
Well, go ahead. What's your response?
Because it has to do with historical circumstance. It has to do with historical circumstance of the Jews versus of being a minority. I mean that's the answer.
But David, instead
no, that was not the historical circumstance. Sorry, I'm just go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
I just want to say, instead of trying to explain the fact, Frame Games is asking, does this meet your criteria for empirical evidence? You should say yes. It's a fact that you recognize that these organizations exist.
I accept that the organizations exist, but I don't think that they're dispositive of ethnocentrism.
Okay, but that's the next level of analysis, and thank you for saying that, Jeff, because this is sort of my great frustration. I really want to try to make this a productive conversation, but that was a very basic question, David. I mean, that should have been a yes right away so that we could have moved on, and it's very frustrating to have to move through this procedure every time.
Yeah, change the question.
No, I asked that point blank. Does that meet your standard?
No, it does not meet my standards for ethnocentrism, for proof of ethnocentrism. No,
it does meet your standard for empirical evidence.
Right. No, because what I would consider evidence would be evidence that Jews hire Jews at a higher rate than would be expected, and higher than non-Jewish whites hire non-Jewish whites.
Frame Games will get there, but
okay,
now
sure.
we've just asked you if you recognize the fact that these organizations exist.
Yes.
And it's true.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm actually shocked to hear you walk that back. It sounds like what you just said was that evidence of organizing into a group explicitly for your identity is not evidence for ethnocentrism around that identity. And then you related that to being a minority in historical circumstance, but that's a separate issue. That's about whether or not it's justified to organize on those grounds, not whether you are. So, I mean, how are you not conceding this point, man?
Because minorities that feel under threat are more likely to organize, and I don't see that. I think that Israel is under more threat than Ireland, and I think that Israel is under more threat than Germany.
Okay, then what you should say. So then what you should say is, yes, they are more ethnocentric, but is morally justified on the following grounds. No.
How
do you define ethnocentrism, David?
A genetically mediated impulse to associate with your own subgroup.
That's not
okay.
what ethnocentrism is.
Yeah, it's promotion of your in-group. It's collective organization for the promotion of one's in-group.
Isn't that just ethnic advocacy?
Yes, but are you getting the point now?
No. I'm. Let's see. Let's define.
Evaluation of other cultures
Sorry, Jeff.
Evaluation of other cultures according to preconceptions originating in the standards and customs of one's own culture.
Yeah, no. The Jews in the West have adopted Western culture.
Well, okay. Well, if I actually looked that up too before. I think JF, if you look up ethnocentric, that might get you closer, because there's something called, like ethnocentrism studies. There's ethnomusicology, and I think that what we in sort of common parlance call ethnocentrism is a little bit different than the academic sort of study of things from an ethnic perspective. But I think you'll find ethnocentric to be more along the lines of promotion.
I found it on on Wiktionary, the tendency to look at the world primarily from the perspective of one's own traditional, deferred, or adoptive ethnic culture, which does not does not sound like the Jews of the United States in any way
Wait, hold on.
whatsoever.
It doesn't sound like that more than whites?
No. No.
Okay, so are you saying that the ingrained sense of Jewish identity from being Jewish is no more or less strong than that of being white?
I think the Jews under this definition are not actually ethnocentric at all.
Can you flesh that out?
It says the tendency to look at the world primarily from the perspective of one's own traditional, deferred, or adoptive ethnic culture. Under this definition, most Jews view themselves as Americans.
Oh, okay. So you're
ethnocentrically American.
David, this is so disingenuous, man. Like you're going to try to say that because there's an adopted Western culture that all of Jewish identity is negated?
No, I didn't say that. I said that Jewish ethnocentrism is non-existent under this definition.
Yeah, but you're defining it as not.
I'm not defining it. I'm reading it from a dictionary.
Relying on this clause about it being adopted, about having an adopted culture.
No, I'm not.
Well, I think
I'm relying on the word primarily. The tendency to look at the world primarily from the perspective of one's own traditional, deferred, or adoptive ethnic culture.
Okay. All right. So let's get into some more data. There are more American Jews fighting in the IDF than there are in the Navy. There are three different departments: the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marines. There are more American Jews who are fighting in the IDF, who voluntarily went to Israel to join the IDF, than there are in the Marines. Okay, so
and what about in the Army? You didn't include.
Okay, the army. Well, the Army is vastly bigger, but I'm saying those three organizations together.
Okay,
there are more American Jews there. Hold on a second. That doesn't negate the point.
Includes the IAF, the Israeli Navy, and all of the branches of the Israeli military. So I think that you're cherry picking numbers here.
You think that? Okay, if you think that's cherry picking,
that is cherry picking.
Well, no, it's a recognition of the fact that the Army itself is a much bigger one. I mean, look, if you can call it what you want.
Cherry-picked number. The same number of Jews are in America as are in Israel. So about 6 million in each country. So if there's more Jews in the American military than the IDF, then I don't know what your point is.
Okay, so how about this? How about the fact that there are Israeli advocacy organizations explicitly? There's something called the FIDF, okay, Friends of the IDF. It is a Jewish advocacy group that receives millions of dollars in funding every year to market to American Jews to fight in the Israeli Defense Force.
That's not what Friends of the IDF is.
Okay, tell me.
Friends of the IDF is a propaganda organization.
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah, absolutely. No. But not in order to get American Jews to serve in the IDF. That part's not true. The true part is that it's a group of Jews who are doing public relations for the IDF, and the reason why they do that is because the Arab world likes to malign the IDF and call them baby killers.
No, but that's one of the metrics that they track. That's one of the reasons that there was an article a number of years ago that there was a big debate in the Jewish community about whether to publish the numbers because of the belief that it was Nazi-like to run census data on Jewish participation in the military, because that was part of how Hitler determined whether or not someone was honorary, was whether or not a Jew was willing to fight for Hitler's cause, and there was a big social debate over that, and that data related to campaigns to try to deepen Israeli ties, including fighting in the Israeli Defense Force.
You're equivocating here, because you said that it was a group that tried to recruit Americans to fight in the IDF, which isn't true. No, that's not what you just said. That's not what you just said.
No, that was part of the data they collected. I can pull up a source on that.
Wait, hold on. Collecting data is encouraging Americans to serve in the IDF. In what way?
If it's treated as a success metric. All right. This is one of the reasons that birthright is called birthright. There are a number of metrics that are tracked related to Jewish identity. And one of those are whether or not you fight in the military. I don't even want to, if this is a sticking point for you, I can, there are a million other ways to measure this. But
there are Jewish organizations that are extremely concerned, and these are organizations, and there are small groups of you could say Jewish. What do you call somebody who bestows money upon an organization? Benefactors.
Yeah.
There are many Jewish benefactors, like for example Sheldon Adelson,
right.
who are
a year to birthright,
who are extremely concerned about the statistic that I mentioned earlier, that Jews in the United States are becoming less Jewish at a rate that is seeing the population of Jews have every generation.
Great. Now this is a perfect way to segue to the white identity question, because the reason that I myself became interested in the alt-right is precisely that. The concept of genocide and dwindling numbers and dwindling representational democracy, political power as a result of falling birth rates, of ethnic displacement, and it is a concern that Jews are allowed to have about Israel and around their intermarriage concerns. And it is one that if you were to do that from a white identity perspective, it would get you completely alienated in all respects from Western society. You are not allowed to protect the genetic identity of European heritage unless you happen to be Jewish.
I sort of dispute that. Yeah, no, I mean, so what ended up happening was you had a bunch of people who were concerned about this, right? And you know, it was coming out. I read an article in like the Washington Post about it like a couple of years ago that, you know, people were getting you know, afraid about this, and then you had groups like the alt-right who and whoever who are affiliated with less savory groups, and somehow you turn something from a civilizational social question that should have been answered: should we restrict immigration? Because it's changing the genetic landscape to a sort of something that's been tarred with the brush of extremists.
And you know why that is, though? It's because anytime you try to form any organization around that philosophy, whether or not you are a Nazi, you are called one because of the threat that it is to the political power of diversity industry organizations, of which Jewish advocacy groups are the leading edge.
Okay, and as I was telling you before, the diversity industry calls everyone Nazis. But I mean, the people who are concerned about the white population of the United States, I guess for whatever reason decided to affiliate with these unsavory groups. I mean, if they call us Nazis, let's become Nazis. It's not the best public relations strategy.
Andrew Anglin himself Andrew Anglin is on record saying the only reason he started calling himself a Nazi was because everybody else did, and that is pretty much the case with almost everyone who is at the like the harder edge of the alt-right. It is
Andrew Anglin is a propagandist against.
Are you going to say? I want to understand your honest opinion on this. Do you believe that a white identity movement, in its most benign form, which rejected all Nazi rhetoric explicitly, could be formed today without being boycotted, sanctioned, or attacked until it was commercially bankrupt on the grounds that it was Nazi-ish?
Is American Renaissance bankrupt?
They are marginalized.
They got banned from Twitter.
No. I mean, there are a lot. I've gotten banned from Twitter four times.
Stayed on YouTube, as a matter of fact.
They got banned off Twitter through guilt by association, and I'm a very good example of someone who gets called a Nazi every day when I've not associated with Nazis. I'm really at the edge of white nationalism. I'm not even a full-blown white nationalism. I'm all for racial diversity, but I engage with white nationalists and I respect them. and I adopt part of their beliefs.
Yeah.
And I'm a Jew, and I get called a capo for the beliefs that I have. This is the fact is
because
the
you're
anti-Semitism
propagandist.
has been a cudgel that has been used for extortion and self-defense to justify bad deeds for now going on almost 100 years.
Which bad deeds?
I mean, I just gave you the example of the
Which
APAC.
bad deeds? Which bad deeds?
I just gave you the answer.
You said 100 years.
Yes.
Okay,
I'll tell you why. Because in 1918, hey, slow down. You'll get the answer you're looking for. In 1918, you know how the ADL got started? It got started because someone was accused of raping a girl and was found guilty by a court, and then received a pardon from the governor, and it was basically the people rushed into jail to hang somebody who was about to be pardoned, and then the ADL formed as a way to prevent anti-Semitism, so that next time they could stop groups like that. But that itself.
So, are you defending lynchings and extrajudicial executions? I mean, I don't know. I don't know the context of the Leo Frank case so much, but
because the ADL's philosophy has been to adopt exactly those same tactics. Going back, you can look up Meyer Lansky, you can look up Mo Dalitz. The ADL has been bankrolled by Las Vegas gangsters since the 1920s. It's a fact. Look it up. And the fact is, I mentioned earlier in this stream that in 2005, when those two APAC execs were caught with classified information, APAC's full court press on the FBI was going to be that it was anti-Semitism. The only reason this ever came to light is because they were sued for defamation, and it came out in discovery documents.
Exactly. So evidently it didn't work.
No, it didn't work because the charges got dropped. They got pardoned by Obama. Because of the power of
that doesn't mean the charges were dropped, dude.
David.
No, what I'm saying is he directed the FBI to drop the case
in 2005.
It was 2010 or something. It was years later because it was in litigation, and you can look this up. I mean, I'm happy to pass on a link. But the fact, I mean, it sounds like this is another one of these cases. This is like maybe the fourth or fifth time in this stream where very basic, like you deny that anti-Semitism is used as both as a sword and a shield. It's used as a way to completely destroy enemies on grounds that are unrelated. That is, to get them censored, to lead consumer boycotts, to apply political pressure, to get political voting blocks to get angried up, and as a shield to cover up bad deeds by saying, well, you can't even talk about it at all because it's anti-Semitic. The discussion of the JQ itself is a perfect example. To even talk about it is to be called anti-Semitic. How can you deny this?
How's the anti-Semitic? I've heard lots of people discuss it in the past.
No. I'm talking about in the public square. I'm saying talking about it in polite society.
Okay, hold on, really quick.
State
JF, are we in the public square?
Regularly. Sorry. Go ahead. No,
JF,
go ahead.
Are we in the public square?
David, I mean, you're derailing so much. It's like you have 5 streams in your mind, and I can only follow one. So are we in the public square? It's a legal question. I mean, the internet operates in every way as a public space. And in fact, it's now a highway for IDs that if I was to yell on the street, no one would hear because everyone is in front of their computers. It's a complex question. It has nothing to do. Babylon, go ahead.
Terribly sorry for interrupting you there, Mr. Gayepi. Anyway, going ahead. David, I just wanted to say, you said something earlier that was patently untrue. You said, well, the diversity industry calls everyone Nazis these days. First of all, no. They'll call Nazis people, generally, the closer you are to being a Westerner who wishes to present identity, or a Westerner who wishes to talk about simply things that are objective reality. 2 different things that are not related. People link them. I mean, things which are related, but things that they don't need to be related. For instance, identitarian sentiment can exist without acknowledging HBD or even understanding it or anything like that, as well as acknowledging human and biodiversity can be done without having identitarian sentiments. But that being said, basically, sorry, where was I? Basically, the point is, like a black person, when black identity or sometimes Jewish identity, oftentimes Jewish diaspora identity, some identity, mestizo, the identity being espoused by those who are generally like mestizos or some variant of indigenous population, et cetera, non-European identities, when they espouse identitarian sentiment, they are not called Nazis. They are actually associated with the left. It's actually, if you'll look and see like black identitarianism in the West often, or even sometimes with Muslims, even though their values could be described in their own personal life as identitarian, traditionalist, reactionary, they are never called Nazis. The people who are called Nazis are only those who are of European descent. And also, I just wanted to say, we've established, I mean, it's been painful and incredibly annoying to do it, but bit by bit, we've gotten to the point that, Jews are not a population that originates in Europe. They are a population exogenous to Europe and to the West. And we've come to the point that, they have their own distinct ethnic or identity interest, or even then, if that isn't the case, let's say it's the mixed descendant of a Jew, they still have that history and that baggage and that narrative, as well as the whole implication of the whole identity confusion, let's say, that can exist from being a mixed race person. Mixed race people might tend to prefer an ideology that tends away from, let's say, rigid ethnic or racial identity. But anyway, so we've finally established all of this.
No,
but
we didn't. You made a jump. You made a departure in logic there.
All right, where's the departure in logic?
You said that because Jews are a group exogenous to Europe, ergo they have different interests.
Why would Jews not have different interests to Europe? The history of Jews in Europe began when Jews were, I mean, there's a longer history than that, but effectively the history of Jews in Europe as we know it began when Rome, I think after Greece, but Rome ethnically cleansed Judeans from the Levant. They renamed Judea to Palestine. Jew is an ethnonym for the Judean people. The Jewish history with Europeans is founded on conflict. I think Jews and Europeans should go their own separate ways. Jews should live in their lands and Europeans should live in their lands, and therefore we won't have this conflict of interest. Obviously there's conflict of interest.
At the time of the Roman Empire, 6 times as many Jews lived outside of the Levant as lived in it. I don't know if you're.
Yes, I know this happened over the course of a period of colonialism. Yes. That's what colonialism looks like.
No,
and
I said 6 times as many Jews lived in Europe as did in Judea. Okay, so we're talking about a population that probably goes back even further than the existence of the Roman Empire.
Okay, cool. The diaspora was gradual. Great. I don't think the diaspora was anything that Jews wanted. Jews did not want to be displaced or ethnically cleansed from their indigenous land.
They were not living there when they could have moved back voluntarily. What do you mean? They were voluntarily.
There were several factors. Moving was very difficult, first of all, back then, and there are so many different factors. It's actually a very nuanced issue, but there is a reason why. If you look at, there is a consistent theme within the texts written by. You can look at Jewish authors, poets. You can look at religious texts. They're weeping on the banks of X, Y, and Z river, and they're crying, remembering their indigenous land. The point is, Jews have always wanted to return to our indigenous land. Now we have it. Or we should assimilate and fully assimilate. There is no in between. There is no fucking neoconservatism. Pardon my language. There's no neoconservatism. There's no APAC. There's no SPLC. Jewish identity cannot exist within the West. Jewish identity can exist. Western identity can exist in the West. There's a fundamental conflict here.
I think that the ultimate disposition of the Jews in the West is assimilation. That is, and I think that that the ADL and the and APAC are artifacts of this assimilation. And I think that birthright is an artifact of this assimilation. The assimilation is finally happening, and it's sad to see us go, I guess, but that's what's going to happen.
Oh wait, okay, so all right, because I'm glad that we're sort of circling back to what the topic here is. Did I just hear you say that you think Jewish identity is going to basically wither away soon because of intermarriage and assimilation?
Yeah, I don't
Okay,
think there's any way to stop it. I think that if you look at a country like the Netherlands, it's already happened. The number of Jews.
Okay, so let's formulate some hypotheses around that. So would you expect, for example, the amount of money related to Jewish causes, and I'm talking about domestic causes, not just Israel, would you expect that to dry up then as a result of a decrease in external explicit Jewish identity?
Over the next 100 years, probably, yeah.
Over the next 100 years. Okay, because there have been a number of 5-year projections that I've seen, mostly out of this book, Big Israel, which I recommend everybody read, that actually show that the velocity of money has been increasing pretty.
The velocity of money.
Yes. Okay. Do you want to cherry pick like that exact word?
No, I'm asking you.
The rate at which more money is being invested into the industry is that enough?
Yeah, I mean, because they're two sort of different things.
Oh, yeah, dude. I mean, here's what's very. Let me make a meta.
I didn't know what you meant.
On the one hand, you demand quantitative data for even the most basic sky is blue stuff. Then on the other hand, you insert your subjective reality into things like for example, the fact that you subjectively don't allow you don't legitimize Sharon Brous, or the fact that you subjectively don't think that certain people are Nazis. You're ignoring the objective reality, which I thought was going to be the focus of the stream. I thought there were at least some basic premises here that were pretty much indisputable. And to the fact that they are disputed, I'd like to hear reasons why, and not simply that it's your subjective experience.
What do you mean? What do you mean, my subjective experience? I'm telling you that I don't accept those premises because you haven't provided evidence or proof of them.
No, I made a specific testable hypothesis. If Jewish identity is going away, then you would expect investment of funds related to Jewish identity to slow or stabilize and not to radically increase. Is that correct or no?
No, absolutely not. No, because as more Jews begin to assimilate, there will be more effort on the part of the previous generation, which is astonishingly well off, to try to prevent the assimilation. We know that's been happening for somewhere around 30 years. That's why the investment has continued to go up. That's why birth rate was established. It's only
exactly right.
It's only semi-effective.
Right.
It's not really effective at all.
Well, no, hold on a second. It's not only semi-effective. It was extremely effective in Israel when there was a huge issue back in the 80s about the demographic threat of Arabs outbreeding Israelis, and then a number of Israeli policies that were instituted to increase the birth rate of Jewish women, and it ended up being fantastically successful. In fact, it was something that the administration is most proud of, the fact that now the Jewish birth rate in Israel outstrips that of Arab women. And that was considered a major victory in the demographic threat to the Jewish state that it might have a non-Jewish majority.
Cool.
So they do work. I mean, so what I hear now is you're trying to dismiss the threat. I'm trying to dismiss the threat of explicit Jewish identity by assuring us that it's going to go away soon. And then at the other side of your mouth saying, well, you know what, it's going to continue to be really well funded. And you know what, it actually might work.
There's a reason why it won't work. It's not an either or question, right? So what you did is you presented a false dichotomy, right? The difference in Israel and the United States is that Israel is majority Jewish and there's very bad relations with the Arabs there. So the intermarriage rate is pretty much non-existent, right? In the United States, actually relations between Jews and white Gentiles, as it were, is actually pretty good. And
no, Jews and white people. Jews aren't white. We've established that. Jews come from the Levant. They're at best.
We haven't established that. You're splitting hairs. You're splitting hairs.
No. This is
important. They're considered by the government to be white.
Listen,
they're considered by the government to be white. You're splitting hairs.
David, I'll accept it. Go on.
Listen, the government, it also says people from Yemen and North Africa are, quote, white. That's meaningless. The government also said that Jews, they put Hebrew on their identifications, not white, not European.
Where's that?
Hebrew.
Where's that?
In old documentation. You can actually look on the internet at old Jewish passports and documentation from around the time of Ellis Island or something like that. You'll see Hebrew. It does not say white. The idea of Jews
because they
white
spoke Hebrew or Yiddish.
No, not because they spoke Hebrew, because Hebrew is another ethnonym for Jew. If you don't know that, how can you even call yourself a Jew? The Hebrew people, Hebrews.
Okay, yeah, and Italian is an ethnonym for people from Italy. Irish is an ethnonym for people from Ireland. I mean, like this is
Hebrews, exactly.
okay.
Hebrews come from the Levant, and Hebrew is an ethnonym for people from the Levant, not Europe.
Oh, okay, but you realize that the Levant was closely linked with European civilization for pretty much
Yeah, you know what?
ages?
And so was North Africa. But are North Africans Europeans? Nope. In fact, they've been having
North
wars
Africa-
with Europeans
North
for very
Africa-
long periods of time. And you
North
know what
Africa
else was
was
close to Europe?
invaded by
Central
North
Asia.
Africa was-
There are lots of Central Asian peoples that have entered Europe and raided and conquered. Does that mean Central Asians are Europeans now?
Are the
population-
Hungarians European? Are the Hungarians European?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you know where they come from?
Europe. They
No,
have
they
like
don't. The
Yes.
Hungarians
Oh
don't
my
come
God,
from
are you
Europe.
really going to do this? If you look at
Everyone
genetic-
comes
The
from somewhere
Magyars,
else
the
at some
Magyar,
point.
no, JF. The Magyars invaded Hungary in the year 900.
Yeah, and they left maybe a lot of cultural influence and about very minimal genetic influence. If you look it
Okay,
up, it's
okay,
at most like 20%, far
okay,
less than the
and-
Levantine influence in
Okay,
Ashkenazi Jews. So don't even go there.
Okay, so then here's my question: the Finns are only culturally, I guess, Yamnaya or only culturally Christian. They are genetically unrelated to the rest of Europeans. So are they white?
Sorry, which population? It cut out.
The Finnish
No,
people from Finland.
actually,
No.
if you want a nuanced and in-depth analysis by someone who actually knows what they're talking about, Survive the Jive does a great video on this, and you can look at it. Are Finns European? And he concludes by saying, like yes, while they do have a lot of Y DNA from Uralic populations, overall genetically, they're pretty much Europeans. They're pretty much an indigenous European population.
That's
Why DNA
not what the studies I've. That's not
I-
what the studies I've read said.
No, they have some admixture. Yes, they do, but
They
they're
have
pretty much
they don't have some admixture. They're almost
No,
entirely
fundamentally, okay. They settled in Europe when they didn't settle like in an. Okay, the point is, Finns are an ethnic group that originated within Finland. Finns, as we know it, the ethnicity Finns originated within Finland.
because
Jews
they were
as an
northern
ethnicity
Asian
originated in
Asian
ethnicity.
hunter gatherers.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's going really far back, dude. All right, cool. But the point
That's not
is,
going that
Jews-
far back.
No. Okay, okay. I'm saying like, this is fucking pointless, dude. Jews are.
Yeah, wait, oh,
Jews are
can I- I'm sorry.
Jews are a Levantine ethnicity.
There was a point I was
So
building.
it's-
I really
and
wanted
Soviets
an
are
answer
considered
on
white.
this identity question.
You're
Because
literally
I think
deconstructing your own identity, you moron. Sorry.
David's point that he was trying to build to was that we don't need to worry about the threat of continued Jewish identity and whatever influence it might exert because of the intermarriage rates and various data related to in the West Jews assimilating. And what I'm trying to fight against is the fact that, just as he mentioned, as those trends continue, organized Jewish influence lobbies will continue to implement more and more draconian measures to try to prevent that from happening. And that is why one of the reasons in 2017, in 2018, we now have Holocaust classes being taught in 5 states in high school. And if you know the way, I mean, I've read a ton of behind the scenes stuff from APAC and from JFNA and from the JCRCs. And one of the things they talk about are ways to foster Jewish identity to do exactly what you're talking about, which is to prevent the loss of Jewish identity. And one of the ways they do that is through the Holocaust. And that's one of the reasons that it's a little weird that in 2018, we have a whole semester dedicated to the Holocaust in 5 states in the country, which was not the case 10 years ago. And our country is going to suffer as a result of these attempts to try to consolidate Jewish identity.
Wait, our country is going to suffer in what way?
In the way that we have an event that happened between 1939 and 1949 in a foreign country that is being taught, that is being suddenly taught as its own 6-month semester long course, and that is something that is very novel to American education. There's a lot of stuff to learn in life.
When I
a lot
was
of
in
people
elementary
a lot of people
school-
might make the argument that that's not exactly what we should be doing 70 years after an event, to be turning up the volume on it more and more and more, just so that Jews can have more explicit identity, and so that their political lobby can continue to have the strength that it does.
I think that you've made a jump here in logic again.
Well, tell me about it. How do you respond to it?
The public school teaching of Holocaust classes encourages Jewish identity. How?
For the same reasons that were cited to you earlier with empirical data about how the Holocaust is the most unifying feature of Jewish identity, more so than belief in God.
So then why would they be targeting Florida public schools where there's like
Broward? Okay, sure. I mean, for one, there are Jewish students, and there are also non-Jewish students who come to have an acceptance about explicit Jewish identity because it has been normalized in their classrooms. Meanwhile, their own identity has been pathologized. Do you deny?
I don't think that the Holocaust is about Jewish identity at all. I think that
is the single most unifying element of Jewish identity.
It's the single thing that Jews care about most, but that doesn't mean that it legitimizes Jewish identity among non-Jews. This is the jump in logic you're making.
Whoa. I see what you did there. So you're not responding to its effect on Jews. Do you deny that
I don't think that
a unifying force among Jews in terms of consolidating Jewish identity?
Yes.
Do you deny that?
But then why would they try to? Why would they try to put it in place in? Why would they? No. Why would they try? Why would they try to put it in place in Florida, where there's like no Jews at all?
What do you mean there's no Jews at all? Broward County, dude, the Parkland shooting was at a 40% Jewish high school.
Have you been to Boca Raton, dude? Are you kidding me? There are no Jews.
There's a lot of old ass motherfuckers there.
Yes, old Jews.
Dude,
indeed.
Old Jews who don't have children that go to school.
Dude, are you? This is another one of these places where you could just say yes or no, or if you think the question is illegitimate, say why. But is your official position?
I think that the question is illegitimate because it's illogical. So
let me ask you something. Why did the Jewish lobby? Why did the Jewish lobby for it so hard?
Because
why did they lobby for it if it was ineffective?
What do you mean? Probably because they want to increase support for Israel, and the way that they want to do that is.
You think it had absolutely nothing to do with domestic effects on Jewish political power?
No, I think that it had everything to do with domestic effects on Israel's case among non-Jews in the United States.
All Israel, nothing about the domestic Jews who actually live here. That's your position.
Because thoughts of like this would be like the least targeted thing in the entire world.
Okay,
right?
So then how do you explain this? The 2001 article entitled "The Jewish Stake in America's Changing Demographics" was written by Dr. Stephen Steinleit, and one of the things that he writes about is that he is concerned about the growing Hispanic portion of the U.S. demographics because the Jewish community gets away with much of its demands because of Christian guilt about the Holocaust. He says this explicitly.
What are his actual words?
You can look at. You want me to? I'll pull up the exact words. And I got to tell you this: they're a lot worse than what you probably could imagine. I did a full-length video on this.
Pull up the exact words.
Go ahead. I will pull up the exact words here.
While he pulls the words, I will say here on the show we had a Jew, and just to show how the Holocaust plays in Jewish identity, I was asking him of a difference of behavior he had with respect to what he would allow for Israel and what he would allow for whites having an ethno-state. And he said, Israel, I asked him, why does Israel have a right to an ethno-state and not the whites? And he answered, Israel is there for protecting the Jews from the greatest crime of humanity happening again.
Okay, so I have JF. Would you mind if I just read this real quick? Because
go for it.
I mean, it really is the coup de grace on this. Okay, so here's the sentence. It says, and this is after talking about the Hispanic demographics. It says that America has largely tolerated this dual loyalty. That is the dual loyalty between being an American and being faithful to the Jewish state of Israel, we get a free pass, I suspect, largely over Christian guilt about the Holocaust. He says that America has largely tolerated this dual loyalty. We get a free pass, I suspect, largely over Christian guilt about the Holocaust, makes it no less a reality. And then he goes on to say that one of the reasons that Jews may lose political power with the growing rise of Hispanic strength is that being Hispanic and being primarily from Mexico, they do not have any affiliation with the Holocaust. They feel no ancestral guilt, and they are not subject to the teachings of Vatican II, the Second Vatican Council in 1965, which
And what's the actual quote? You have it open.
Yes, I do. I just read you the exact quote. You want me to read
No. The continuing argument, because you put it in your own words.
Yes. Okay, so here you go. I'll find Hispanic one. I'm curious how you respond to the one I just read while I'm pulling this up.
Because Hispanics are subject to the teachings of Vatican II. Any Orthodox Catholic is subject to the teachings of Vatican II. The only people who aren't subject to the teachings of Vatican II are the Sedevacantists, which is a pretty small organization.
Nope. Okay, so here you go. So here's this one of these sections. Does it matter that the majority non-European immigrants have no historical experience of the Holocaust or knowledge of the persecution of Jews of the ages, and see Jews only as the most privileged and powerful of white Americans? It is important that Latinos, who know us almost entirely as employers for the menial low-wage cash services they perform for us, such as blowing leaves from our lawns in Beverly Hills or doing our laundry in Short Hills, will soon form 1/4 of the nation's population? Does it matter that most Latino immigrants have encountered Jews in their formative years, principally only as Christ killers in the context of a religious education in which the changed teachings of Vatican II barely penetrated or not at all? So how do you respond to that? Oh, and the next sentence is about fear that Jewish safe seats in Congress will soon be held by Latino representatives, which is exactly what just happened to Dianna Feinstein in California, being replaced by a Latino. She just got the back from the DNC in California of a Latino candidate. This is all stuff. Yeah, I mean, do you want me to keep? I mean, dude, there's like so many damning things you need to respond to. You want me to just keep reading?
I don't see how that's damning. That's called an editorial trying to convince Jews not to want more immigration.
Was the head of the Center for Immigration Studies. This is no slouch. And here he is several times in one article telling you that he has existential anxiety about the fact that the Holocaust guilt has not penetrated deeply enough into the Hispanic population. Respond to that.
Okay. He had concerns that the knowledge of the Holocaust, was not as familiar among Latinos. And anyway, I don't want Latinos in our country.
Why? What? Wait, but dude, look at you. You want to talk about equivocating, man? How about the fact that he says that Jews get away with dual loyalty concerns mostly because of Christian guilt over the Holocaust? Do you want to acknowledge that? Do you think he's the only Jew in a position of power who holds that belief? Do you think that might have something to do with
it's definitely
Holocaust studies now in 5 states?
It's definitely true, but I never disputed that. That was actually my personal point. What you said was something completely different. What you said was that it was an attempt to target the small number of Jewish students in Florida, which made no sense.
No, I said no. First of all, I told you it's 5 states. It's 5 states and David, you're not letting me finish because you know this is for a slam dunk. Okay,
a slam dunk
it's not just about identity and the fostering of explicit Jewish identity and the pathologizing white identity.
How is that pathologizing white identity? It says right there they want to pathologize Mexican identity too.
No,
they want sympathy. They want sympathy.
It's because the Holocaust education is used as a political public relations battering ram.
I said that.
And what it does,
I said that.
So how do you
that?
David,
I told you that.
Are you serious right now?
You
completely 180 what you said.
No, I didn't. I didn't start by denying that. What I denied was that it was.
And here's the other thing. I love how you left out. This was very strategic of you. I love how you left out my point about the Holocaust education's effect on non-Jews in terms of normalizing explicit Jewish identity. I love how you didn't mention.
That was
I was just trying to talk about a handful of Jews in Broward County when I mentioned it was 5 states.
Okay, so what effect does it have on normalizing Jewish identity?
Because what it does is it creates a double standard by creating some. This was the whole uniqueness doctrine, which started after 1967 with the rise of the Holocaust itself as a political weapon. The uniqueness doctrine posits that there was no genocide in human history of the nature or magnitude of the Holocaust, and as such, there are certain double standards that apply to Jews that Jews get the benefit of that other groups do not. Among them, well, you just heard in this article from Dr. Stephen Steinlight, who was the head of the Center for Immigration for 5 years, saying that dual loyalty is one of those.
Okay. I don't deny that. I told you that there are domestic organizations that lobby for Israel. Absolutely.
Yes. But my point is that
absolutely.
Okay, great. See, this is another example of having to spend 20 minutes establishing the most basic of facts.
I never rejected this. I never rejected
without any outs in the deck at all that you'll finally concede the most basic facts about gravity.
I never rejected the idea. I still don't think that the Holocaust classes were created to encourage more Jewish identity among Jews. It doesn't make sense. That was what I disputed.
Perfect sense.
It doesn't make sense because there's not that many Jews in Florida. You could think of a million more.
I told you it was 5 states and growing.
Stop with the not so many Jews in
Which
Florida.
states?
Stop.
Which states?
You want me to pull up the list? See, this is so funny. I love this, man. Like the refusal to acknowledge, like the doublespeak too. Like you just conceded it. And now, like hearing
I
about
didn't.
the
I know
doors that
because
open,
you
have to
made
concede
3
again.
distinct points, and I disputed one of them.
All right.
Actually, two of the 3.
I'll pull up this list, but while I do, I would like you to not stall for time. I would like you to address the double standard here in the permission of identity along the lines of being racially white and being racially Jewish.
Okay, there's nothing preventing anybody from being ethnically European of any individual European country. So it's not really a double standard, right? I'm just saying there's not really any double standard there because it's you can identify as Irish American. There's no stigma whatsoever.
All right.
You can identify as Italian American. There's no stigma whatsoever.
But hey, look, you can identify as a Sephardic Jew. You can identify as an Ashkenazi Jew. You can identify as Mizrahi. Why are you allowed to call yourself?
You can identify as a Yemenite Jew as well.
But the point is,
you can identify. Okay.
Here's why. Because Irish people will be attacked because they're white, but they are not allowed to have an identity. They're not allowed to have an affirmative identity. So what this results in is having a racial identity that
Who's not allowing them to have it?
Oh, okay. Are we going to have this conversation now?
Who's not
allowing them to have it?
If I start a white union at college versus if I start a Jewish one, that's the hill you want to die on? There's nothing stopping you from a white identity movement.
The people who tried to start the white student unions ended up being like that dude from the Traditionalist Workers Party, the fat guy. I mean, like, come on, dude.
So you're saying that if I did it as a well-to-do New York corporate attorney, you're saying if I did it, I probably wouldn't encounter, I wouldn't really counter any more resistance than if I started a Jewish union. Is that what you're saying? Sounds like that's what you have.
No. You know, people trying to ruin your life. Don't even try, dude.
No, he's going to walk it back in a second here, but it's going to take us 15 more minutes to get there.
I think you would, because there's been a stigma attached to it because of some interesting things that happen in the United States.
Yeah, except you could point to some interesting things and point to any ethnic group and say those people have done some interesting things. They shouldn't be allowed to have a state. People do that with Israel all the time. Before Andy and Jean-Francois cut in with the super chats, I just want to quickly ask a series of really brief yes or no's. Do you believe that the Jewish people have a right to self-determine in their indigenous land?
No, I don't believe in any right
to
self-determination
let me rephrase that.
by anyone.
You don't? Okay, interesting. Do you believe that it is morally, it is a defensible moral principle for Jews to self-determine, or Hebrew people?
I don't believe in I'm saying self-determination.
I'm saying, do you think that if someone was to believe in self-determination, do you think that is a morally defensible position?
I don't
Yes or
think
no?
I don't think it's a moral. I don't think it's a morally. I guess it doesn't have. It's not a position with any moral effect.
Okay, cool. Whatever. I mean, yeah, dude. I guess we're just on totally different wavelengths. It just seems like you have you're saying that Europeans are somehow the exception in terms of they're not, or people of
No,
European ancestry.
nobody has the right to self-determination. There's no
No, you're
such
saying
thing.
that Europeans can't express some
Nobody has the right to self-determination. And I didn't say
Can
that
you
Europeans.
expand on that? What do you mean? Do you mean that you don't
The
believe in
only,
liberty?
the only,
You don't believe
I
in
don't,
democracy?
no, I
You don't
don't,
believe in nations?
I don't believe that there is any such thing as a human right to self-determination. In the United States, the South wanted to self-determine in order to secede from the United States. And the United States declared war. Well, actually, I mean, they took the secession of the South as a declaration of war.
But
Okay,
what about the United States?
what do you mean? The
Well,
United States
does
had
the
the
United States
had
have
no
the right to self-determine? I'm
absolutely
trying
not.
to map here.
Why
No,
not?
the United States.
No.
The United States never had a right to self-determine. They had to fight for it. They
By
had
the
to
way,
fight a war. There's no such thing as a
So you
moral
believe
right.
in conqueror's right. So you believe in right by conquest.
Absolutely. That's the only way of the world.
So if tomorrow all the Jews were rounded up from the West and deported back to Israel, you wouldn't have a problem with that?
No, and I think
It's
that
his right of conquest?
I think that's why they are fighting against it. Honestly,
Are you
I think
trolling?
that no.
By the way, the
I
five
think-
states are Florida, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, and California.
Okay.
And there's
what-
there's a movement to lobby the Department of Education in Pennsylvania, Texas, Hawaii, and a handful of other states here at least. And this is from 2014, so you can imagine.
I think it's misguided. I think it's misguided. I don't know. I don't know who's
Here's
behind
again
it.
one of these positions. This is where you once again insert your own your personal opinion about whether or not something's a threat. When we're trying to deal with the objective reality, I don't care if you
threat. It's a threat to who?
That doesn't matter at all. All that matters is that this is the change that's actually happening in the world. It's the same thing with censorship. You're like, oh well, I don't think things should be censored. Well, I don't care what your opinion
No, I
is.
think
We're
that-
talking about the institution of power.
I think censorship. No, that's a straw man. I said that the institutional power is just as much behind fighting against censorship. I think that you could say that the Jewish law faculty is an American institution, as it were.
You think it's equal? You think the forces of pro censorship and anti censorship are evenly balanced at this moment, March 9th, 2018? You think they're evenly balanced
Among Jews?
Yes,
I think
among
that there
Jews.
are actually. I think that among Jews there are actually more Jews who are pro free speech.
Okay,
I think
so.
I think that
How you define free speech is going to be tricky here. But let me ask you something.
I mean unrestricted.
show you data.
Unrestricted free speech.
Unrestricted. So, for example, no hate speech laws.
Absolutely no. I'm reasonably confident that among Jews support for the.
What gives you that confidence? What gives you that confidence? Where's your empirical data?
I mean, if you look at the organizations that are pushing against censorship, they're like Jewish dominated.
Yes, but the ones that are pushing for censorship are Jewish too, they have a lot more.
They're not Jewish dominated. They're actually probably majority, probably black and Latino.
David, the only exception to this is BDS. That is the only.
What do you mean? What do you mean? National Lawyers Guild?
National whose guild?
National Lawyers Guild. Have you ever been to a BDS meeting? It's affiliated with the Communist Party.
Yes, I know.
Okay,
I'm aware.
No. I'm not saying just the National Lawyers Guild. I'm saying the BDS is intersectional with the Communist Party, and so is NLG, right? And so is the Black Students Union.
You're just saying things that I know are true. Respond to the point.
But yeah, my point is that pro censorship movements are not Jewish dominated. There's no evidence for that whatsoever.
And I'm sorry. You referred to a lawyers guild. Your citation for that is a lawyers guild.
What? No, the National Lawyers Guild. Do you know the history of the organization?
Okay, how about the American Bar Association?
The American Bar Association is against censorship.
It's against censorship, dude. In 2016, there were ABA regulations that were propagated that are now being adopted by a number of state bar associations that says that you are responsible as a lawyer for hate speech done in a legal setting outside of your work. So basically,
Okay, that's not an institutional opinion, dude.
What do you mean? That's the American Bar Association.
The American Bar Association
saying that you get disbarred if you make a verbal, and here's how they defined it. This is one of the kickers.
I watched
it is verbal conduct manifesting bias. Verbal conduct manifesting bias is enough to get you disbarred now under the ABA.
Yes, it was a proposal.
I would love to hear your definition of institution.
Proposal.
No, it was passed.
When was it passed? When was it passed?
I'll look it up for you. I think it was 2016. But I'll
proposed in 2016.
And then
okay. So while we rule out this point, Frame Games,
okay,
Andy will be reading the super chats, and you'll come back with the facts.
Yeah, a couple super chats, and then we'll return to that. Ray Edwards, $10, focusing on individual incidents to dismember general rules speaks so well towards how people thought process going into this can be very wrong. Thank you for that.
Can I just pull up this quote real quick before, and then you get back to the super chats. Sure. It was passed by the American Bar Association on August 11th, 2016, endorsing sweeping speech rules that, when adopted by state bar associations, will apply not just to courtroom conduct, but also to participation in any bar association, business, or social activities in connection with the practice of the law. That is, any verbal conduct manifesting bias will get you disbarred or sanctioned. Boom.
It's a proposal. It's a proposal.
It's not a proposal.
No. I'm saying it's okay. So state bar associations have the ability to
10 minutes with super chats because it's
okay. So state bar. So
10 minutes.
You know the structure of the bar.
Figure it out in 10 minutes.
The American Bar Association is not an actual licensing organization.
Yes, dude.
It's a professional organization.
Is this how you're going to try to weasel out of it? You're going to say that because it was passed by the ABA, but because I don't have the exact data on hand about which state bar associations on, dude, it's a matter of time. You don't think a single state bar association? You don't think a single state bar association has adopted this? And if I can find one that does, will you concede your argument right now?
I'm pretty sure that it would be unconstitutional for them to do. It would be illegal.
Okay. So you're saying no? I just want to hear these words. I am wrong. If you can pull up that data. Just say that phrase, and I'll look it up.
I am wrong if you can pull up that data.
Okay.
All right, Andy, it seems like this is your time. You won't have to wait 10 minutes. Let's read some super chats.
All right, AW, $10. The past is the past. We live in the present. Thank you for coming on and staying today. I truly hope we can all work together in the current year. All of us Americans, take care, brothers. The Rebbe threw another $50. And he said, in response to his claim about Frame, he says, no Jew who reads my blog thinks Frame Games studied Judaism or Judaism. Sorry, pardon me. It is an epic destruction. None. Ask any Jew to read it. They will all agree. Frame?
Come on, the Rebbe. That's like, you want us to purity spiral with Jews?
Look, I'm not an Orthodox Jew. I'm not Orthodox, but I was confirmed in bar. Dude, not only was I bar mitzvahed, I did the extra Jew thing where I spent 2 years studying for confirmation. Now, granted, I wasn't like the best student. I didn't care about it. I did it mostly for my family, and it was a part of my identity. But like, dude, quiz me. Like, I mean, all I've heard is like that one comment about the mezuzah, which is what was culturally transmitted to me, and that's all you have.
Right,
like, I wouldn't be surprised that most Jews in America are more like Frame Games than like the Rebbe. The Jews I've been around, they are like Frame Games. They've been connected to the culture. They don't purity spiral down to you don't have the right understanding of the symbol on your door.
All right, white male, $20. At David, what do you think about the Haaretz? The Haaretz? Haaretz, Haaretz, and other Jewish media groups that promote liberalism and leftism in other countries and attack white identity while promoting ethnocentrism. Fuck, man, I'm fucking up. For Israel and Jews, why not cooperate?
Have you ever actually read Haaretz? Haaretz is like in Israel they call it the Palestinian newspaper published in Hebrew. There are a number of authors at Haaretz who are like on the so far extreme left in Israel that support a one-state solution for Israel, which means effectively letting in 12 million Arabs who would immediately dominate and probably kick all the Jews out.
That's not the average Haaretz writer, though. I'd say. It's like 50-50.
Three of their biggest writers are. They're reviled in Israel. I mean, people don't read Haaretz.
No, I agree. Haaretz is some people on Haaretz are anti-Zionist, but there are actually plenty of articles on Haaretz that even if they're not Zionist, they promote Jewish identity and they talk about Jews as an ethnic group.
They talk about Judaism as liberalism.
They demonize Europeans.
And they also demonize Jews. That's your point.
No, they
absolutely do.
Listen.
That's exactly.
I have been awake. Listen. I have been awake for over 35 hours. I'm exhausted. I'm just trying to get my points across without spurging out, okay? As I have been doing so far. What I'm trying to say is Haaretz, even if they don't promote Jewish identity in terms of nationalism and Jewish identity as Jews being bound to their indigenous land and soil and all that stuff, even if they don't support Zionism or like the current state of Israel or any state like that, the point is they promote Jewish identity, and the idea, the very idea of Haaretz is that it is a newspaper for really within the Jewish community. For Jews, it talks about Jews as a collective with interests, whether they're in Israel, it might be anti-Israel, but in those cases, they often promote the existence of a Jewish identity within the Jewish diaspora, which in my opinion is far more toxic, because in that instance, you're in a zero-sum multicultural game with an indigenous host population, and you're effectively sort of in this relationship where, because again, you have different interests, and as Haaretz shows different interests. That's a perfect example, and many other mags too, and even things like neoconservatism. You see it on the left, you see it on the right. Jews have different interests than Europeans. They are afraid of European identity manifesting itself. If you
find a way to shut down Haaretz, I will love you forever. I don't know what to tell you.
No, I agree. Haaretz sucks, but it's not just Haaretz, dude.
Okay, if you find a way to shut down,
quote unquote right, you'll see that
forward, I will love you forever. I will kiss you. If you figure out a way to shut down the forward, the forward had some article that was like by a non-Jewish woman that was like how do I like impress my my Jewish in-laws or something like that. Like, come on, dude.
Okay, yes, even if we shut down all those really egregiously left-wing Jewish publications that promote this Jewish diaspora identity, or sometimes even promote I guess what's called left Zionism, regardless of that, what matters at the end of the day is there are still going to be Jews on the center and Jews on the right who are averse to identities that are affirmatively Western, affirmatively European, or affirmatively anything of the indigenous population, because even if they don't consciously identify as Jews, which in a lot of cases they do, they identify as outsiders in the civilizations. And you'll notice this is why Jews
and those people
listen, this is why Jews and this is why minorities in general are more prone to like ideologies where it's like more sort of towards let's say an atomized individual view, or a more sort of a global consumer view, or a view that favors their own minority in group, which in a lot of these instances, the more societies that are more like that do favor that in group, because when the indigenous population or the host population is weakened in their sense of identity, that effectively translates over to safety and more life opportunities and more of a good situation materially and in other ways for minority groups, including Jews. I mean, it makes perfect sense. It doesn't take a lot of intelligence to understand this. I feel like you're deliberately obfuscating.
I'm deliberately obfuscating what? Precisely. We got into
plenty of things. Plenty of things. You started the stream by asserting Jews are white, and then you started.
I believe that to be true.
Oh my God. Okay, we're not going over this again. I'll just leave it to the rest of you guys.
American Renaissance agrees with me.
No, we're not going back to this. We're not going back to this. Address the point that I just made. Address the prior point that I just made. We're not going back to are Jews white. Jews are not a European population. That's been established. Go back to what we were talking about before.
I'm saying that they're close enough to white to assimilate.
Yeah, Roma gypsies are also, quote, close enough to white to assimilate, but have they assimilated? No. As a matter of fact, many of them have not assimilated. Many of them, in fact, play an antagonistic role in Western civilizations and are indeed a distinct population.
Okay, but what's their assimilation rate?
Not very high.
Okay, what's the Jewish assimilation rate in the West?
It's quite high. But
so then how can you dispute?
No, when you say okay, all right. Listen, I agree. More Jews are assimilating in the West, but I think that regardless, I don't think that means that. Okay, that's like saying, all right, there's so much more nuance to this than you. I'm too tired. I'm sorry. I'm just too tired to formulate a proper argument.
So I will say assimilation rate. If a group of people cultivate a in-group identity within themselves and they practice maybe not the religion anymore, but at least the symbols of the religion, they carry it and they associate with each other and they spend time with each other. Like when I was at Duke University, there was no Christmas tree. It was this 7-candle stuff that I don't even know the name of. It was clear that everyone around me was Jewish. And so if people keep repeating these things and keep this sense of identity around anything, then the question of assimilation rate is not so important. The fact is that this group distinguishes itself from the rest.
Right. So JF. So here's the thing. The thing about the assimilation rate is that the children of these mixed couples, of these assimilating couples, are not raised Jewish. Only 1/4 are. So we're talking about 3/8 loss of per generation.
But will they be different, and will they continue some form of identity around? Even my father was Jewish, or even my mother was Jewish. There is a difference in genetics, and there is a difference in how people identify as a result of their history and where they perceive themselves within the greater framework of their nation.
Because the United States is full of, I guess, atomized individuals. What ends up happening is that these people they lose any sort of ethnic hyphenation, as it were. They don't identify as Jewish Americans anymore. They just identify as white Americans, basically.
That's very big data. Yeah. So I mean, this is
Richard Lynn's data.
No. So what you're talking about is a trend. And we've already talked about how these trends can reverse and how there are efforts already to reverse them. I mean,
there have been efforts for 30 years.
Yes.
And they haven't reversed. They've, in fact, grown stronger.
Well, the lobby has grown more and more and more. And what we're talking about is organizing for political power along the lines of identity.
I know. I'm talking to JF about something different. And I'm talking to I don't know, this other guy. I don't know what his name is. I'm talking to him about something different. I'm not.
I was trying to tie it back to the broader point.
Okay, yeah, but let's finish this point. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that there's no additional Jewish ethnic identification basically after the second generation of assimilation. These children, they don't marry Jewish people. They have no Jewish identity. They don't celebrate the holidays. They don't feel any sense of kinship with their, I guess, genetic relations. Because these mixed couples, when you say that only 1/4 of them raise their children as Jewish, that means that effectively they celebrate Christmas. They don't affiliate with Jewish practice because the grandparents don't actually practice. There's no way for identification if there's no visible practice whatsoever.
But what we observe is that whatever the percentage that gets mixed race, there is still plenty of Jew people who identify as Jew. And I want to clarify what the chat people are saying, because I raised an hypothetical that JF is a Jew. I want to be very clear here. I'm not a Jew at all. There's not a single Jew in my line of ancestry that I can trace back for hundreds of years, just to be clear.